and Onesilis, now king of Salamis, persuaded all Cyprus to revolt with him, all save the Amalthusians, who would not consent. He accordingly stationed his forces in front of their city and besieged it. Onesilis then besieged Amalthus. When it was reported to Darius that Sardis had been taken and burnt by the Athenians and Ionians, and that Aristagoras the Milesian had been leader of the conspiracy for the making of this plan, he at first, it is said, took no account of the Ionians, since he was sure that they would not go unpunished for their rebellion. Darius did, however, ask who the Athenians were, and after receiving the answer, he called for his bow. This he took, and placing an arrow on it, and shot it into the sky, praying as he sent it aloft, "O Zeus, grant me vengeance on the Athenians." Then he ordered one of his servants to say to him 3 times, whenever dinner was set before him, "Master, remember the Athenians." After giving this order, he called before him Histiaeus the Milesian, whom Darius had kept with him for a long time now, and said, "I hear, Histiaeus, that the vice-regent whom you put in charge of Miletus has done me wrong. He has brought men from the mainland overseas, and persuaded certain Ionians, who shall yet pay me the penalty for their deeds, to follow them, and has robbed me of Sardis. Now then, I ask you, do you think that this state of affairs is good? How did such things come to pass without any advice from your side? See to it that you do not have cause to blame yourself hereafter." To this Histiaeus answered, "My lord, what is this you say, that I and none other should devise a plan as a result of which any harm, great or small, was likely to come to you? What desire or feeling of deprivation would prompt me to do such a thing? All that you have is mine, and I am regarded worthy of hearing all your deliberations. If my vice-regent is indeed doing what you say, be assured that he has acted of his own accord. For myself, I cannot even go so far as to believe the report that the Milesians and my vice-regent were doing you some dreadful wrong. If, however, it is true that they are engaged in such activities, and what you, O king, have heard has a basis in fact, then you can see how unwisely you acted when you forced me to leave the coast. It would seem, then, that as soon as I was out of sight, the Ionians did exactly what their hearts had long been set on. If I had been in Ionia, no city would have stirred. Now send me off to Ionia right away, so that I may restore that country to peace, and deliver into your hands that vice-regent of Miletus who has devised all this. Then, when I have done this to your satisfaction, I swear by the gods of your royal house that I will not take off the tunic I am wearing on my arrival in Ionia, until I have made Sardo, the largest of the islands, tributary to you." With these words Histiaeus successfully deceived Darius, who gave his consent and let him go, charging Histiaeus to appear before him at Susa when he had achieved what he promised. Now while the message concerning Sardis was making its way to the king, and Darius, having done as I said with his bow, held converse with Histiaeus and permitted him to go to the sea, the following events took place. When Onesilis of Salamis was besieging the Amalthusians, news was brought him that Artabius, a Persian, was thought to be coming to Cyprus with a great Persian host. Upon hearing this, Onesilis sent heralds all through Ionia to summon the people, and the Ionians, after no long deliberation, came with a great force. So the Ionians were in Cyprus when the Persians, crossing from Cilicia, marched to Salamis by land, and the Phoenicians were sailing around the headland which is called the Keys of Cyprus. In this turn of affairs, the tyrants of Cyprus called together the generals of the Ionians, and said to them, "Ionians, we Cypriots offer you the choice of engaging either the Persians or the Phoenicians. If you want to draw up your army on land, and try your strength against the Persians, then it is time for you to disembark and array yourselves on land, and for us to embark in your ships to contend with the Phoenicians. If, however, you desire rather to engage the Phoenicians, do so, but whichever you choose, see to it that Ionia and Cyprus become free." To this the Ionians answered, "We were sent by the common voice of Ionia to guard the seas, not to deliver our ships to men of Cyprus and encounter the Persians on land. We will attempt then to bear ourselves bravely in the task which was given us. It is for you to prove yourselves valiant men, remembering what you suffered when you were enslaved by the Medians." This was the Ionians' response, and when the Persian army afterwards arrived on the plain of Salamis, the Cyprian kings ordered their battle line. They drew up the best of the Salaminians and Solians against the Persians, leaving the remaining Cyprians to face the rest of the enemy's army. Onesilis placed himself opposite Artabius, the Persian general. Now the horse which Artibius rode was trained to fight with infantrymen by rearing up. Hearing this, Onesilis said to his attendant, a Carian of great renown in war and a valiant man, I learn that Artibius's horse rears up, and kicks and bites to death whomever he encounters. In light of this, decide and tell me straightway which you will watch and strike down, Artibius himself or his horse. To this his henchman answered, My king, ready I am to do either or both, whatever you desire. Nevertheless, I will tell you what I think is in your best interest. To my mind, a king and a general should be met in battle by a king and a general, for if you lay low a man who is a general, you have achieved a great feat. Failing that, if he lays you low, as I pray he may not, it is but half the misfortune to be slain by a noble enemy. For us servants it is fitting that we fight with servants like ourselves, and with that horse. Do not fear his tricks, for I promise that he will never again do battle with any man. This, then, was his response, and immediately afterwards war broke out on land and sea. The Ionians in their ships, displaying surpassing excellence that day, overcame the Phoenicians, and it was the Samnians who were most brave. On land, when the armies met, they charged and fought. As for the two generals, Artibius rode against Onesilis, who, as he had agreed with his attendant, dealt Artibius a blow as he bore down upon him. When the horse struck his hoofs on Onesilus's shield, the Carian shore away the horse's legs with a stroke of his curved sword. It was in this way that Artibius the Persian general, together with his horse, fell. While the rest were still fighting, Stesanor, the ruler of Carium, allegedly an Argive settlement, played the traitor with a great company of men under him. The war chariots of the Salaminians immediately followed their lead, and the Persians accordingly gained the upper hand over the Cyprians. So the army was routed, and many were slain, among them Onesilis, son of Chersis, who had contrived the Cyprian revolt, as well as the king of the Solians, Aristocyprus, son of Philosiprus, that Philosiprus whom Solon of Athens, when he came to Cyprus, extolled in a poem above all other tyrants. As for Onesilis, the Amathusians cut off his head, and brought it to Amathus, where they hung it above their gates, because he had besieged their city. When this head became hollow, a swarm of bees entered it and filled it with their honeycomb. In consequence of this, the Amathusians, who had inquired concerning the matter, received an oracle which stated that they should take the head down and bury it, and offer yearly sacrifice to Onesilis as a hero. If they did this, things would go better for them. This the Amathusians did, and have done to this day. When, however, the Ionians engaged in the sea battle of Cyprus learned that Onesilus's cause was lost, and that the cities of Cyprus, with the exception of Salamis, which the Salaminians had handed over to their former king Gorgas, were besieged, they sailed off to Ionia without delay. Soli was the Cyprian city which withstood siege longest. The Persians took it in the 5th month, by digging a mine under its walls. So the Cyprians, after winning freedom for a year, were enslaved once more. Darices, Himaeas, and Otanes, all of them Persian generals and married to daughters of Darius, pursued those Ionians who had marched to Sardis, and drove them to their ships. After this victory they divided the cities among themselves and sacked them. Darices made for the cities of the Hellespont, and took Dardanus, Abydos, Percote, Lampsacus, and Pasus, each in a single day. Then, as he marched from Pasus against Piraeus, news came to him that the Carians had made common cause with the Ionians, and revolted from the Persians. For this reason he turned aside from the Hellespont, and marched his army to Caria. It so happened that news of this was brought to the Carians before Darius's coming, and when the Carians heard, they mustered at the place called the White Pillars by the river Marsyas, which flows from the region of Idria and issues into the Maeander. When they had gathered together, many plans were laid before them, the best of which, in my judgment, was that of Pixodarus of Scindea, the son of Mausolus and husband of the daughter of Cynesis, king of Cilicia. He proposed that the Carians should cross the Maeander, and fight with the river at their back, so that being unable to flee and compelled to stand their ground, they might prove themselves even braver than nature made them. This opinion, however, did not prevail, and it was decided instead that the Persians, and not the Cilicians, should have the Maeander at their back, the intent being that if the Persians were overcome in the battle and put to flight, they would not escape, but be hurled into the river. Presently, when the Persians had come and had crossed the Maeander, they and the Carians joined battle by the river Marsyas. The Carians fought obstinately.